Twitter is trialing a new community-driven fact-checking platform called Birdwatch, and if you ask me, it's gonna go horribly wrong. Twitter. At the forefront of the free speech wars and censorship and all kinds of stuff, yet still somehow trying to do the right thing and trying to cut back on bad things and trying to find a more careful and collaborative, all that kind of, no. They've doubled down on censorship and narrative building. And so I would not really expect anything new, including this new community collaborative Birdwatch thing, to be anything short of just another step in this whole unfortunate slide into sort of Orwellian territory. Now, in case you didn't look at the announcement, basically Birdwatch is a new platform that would let people, as they're scrolling through Twitter, find tweets that they disagreed with, well, realistically that they disagreed with, but supposedly that they find not factual, and then report and say, that's not true, this is really what's true. So then basically you log community provided facts in there, and then you get to see, okay, these people said this, these people said this, and then you get to see, all right, this is the actual truth. We're going to just say partly true, mostly false, whatever it is, and just do that. As opposed to now, when Twitter does this in a very much more limited capacity, they do it all manually by Twitter staff. Now they're outsourcing that to the masses. And let me tell you, for a few reasons, this is going to go horribly wrong. It's not going to be the solution that they really hope to present to us, at least, that it is. The first way they went wrong is Twitter is trying to be an arbiter of ultimate truth. They're trying to make sure everything published on the platform is factually correct. And not only is that just a crazy, impossible task because of just the sheer volume of stuff going out, and multiply that by millions and millions of users, and there's just a lot of stuff that's just not going to be factually accurate out there. It's just part of what free speech is, right? Conversations, people talk, and over time, the truth may or may not come out of that, but you can't just decide what isn't the truth for every single person. It's important to note a couple things. First off is what is true and what isn't is science, right? Scientific method, you come up with a hypothesis, you gather data, you test the data against that hypothesis, see if the claims match, etc., and just kind of go around until you find what could be realistically considered to be something that's true. Now, this takes a long time and a lot of work to really get something that's scientifically sound as, true or not. And Twitter isn't like an archive, a scientific journal or anything like that. So they're going to have to figure out what they think is true or not in like a split second. Just like, all right, let's see what we're going to decide. And it can't possibly be true. It can't possibly be true in all of these cases. They figured out what is correct and what isn't. And so there's going to be a lot of, inaccurate thing and biased things. And then as more facts and information come out, how much do you want to bet they're just not going to revisit old claims and just say, okay, well, we instantly said that this was false, but now more information came out and it's actually kind of true. Not only will they not even revisit that likely, but even if they do, it's already too late. They already said it was false, and then people spreading falsehoods can then get, banned from the platform or whatever else. The damage is already done. And also, when you're trying to decide truth, a lot of times there's the same set of raw facts, but the truth is dependent on perspective and other things like that. So you could say, so-and-so said this, okay? And you quote those words and it just says, so-and-so's a racist. Here's the, so-and-so's a racist. Here's the evidence. He said this and this is a bad thing. Of course, that could completely ignore context. That could completely ignore past statements. That could completely ignore a deeper understanding of the person, all that kind of stuff. And so the truth in the matter, like what someone says, Biden says he will never ban fracking or something like that. You can fact check that. The same set of facts, you can come up with a completely different perspective on that, where you say, well, he actually said this as a part of this with the extra context, therefore he didn't actually say that. He kind of said that, and so when he changes his mind later, it doesn't really matter. So it's false. The claim that he said that is false. Or you could just say, no, it's absolutely true. He's on the campaign trail. He said this. It's very clear. There was no immediate context. That's true. And so the same set of facts could provide two completely different, true or false, accurate or misleading or whatever, prognoses based on the exact same thing. So Twitter trying to do all this is basically going to put themselves in the position of a fact maker at this point, where even if they're 100% stringent with the facts, based on timelines of developing information, and based on just the inherent flexibility of conclusions based on the exact same set of facts, you could tell that they're still going to be in a position to strongly shape the narrative according to their whims, regardless of the facts. Second, and worse, they're crowdsourcing this whole fact-checking thing to the masses. Now, this is a terrible idea for a couple of reasons. The first thing is maybe not why it's a terrible idea, but it does have unintended consequences. Right now, Twitter has waited until there was something that was considered significant in some sort of a way, relevant to the greater political discussion or whatnot, before they come in and say that's true or that's false or whatever. And just because they don't have the bandwidth. But guess who does have the bandwidth? Everyone on Twitter. And so if everyone's always reporting things true, false, here's what this happened, here's what that happened, now all of a sudden you're going to have a ton of stuff being reported as true or false or whatever. Now all of a sudden, just about anything you post on Twitter is going to be liable to be, sniped down by this army of do-gooders, as it were. And about that army of do-gooders, Twitter already kind of encourages some sort of unhealthy behavior where people are just online talking shit all day long to celebrities, to other people, death threats, whatever. Just, there's a lot of toxicity out there. They get rewarded for their behavior by this sense of power that they have, that they're all alone in their own house and just not feeling good, but then they get to go say, yeah, you suck, and then they feel that sense of empowerment from just sticking it to someone they feel is evil or deserves it. Now you're actually deputizing them. You're actually giving them a little badge that says, snitch in chief, go ahead, go rat out all these people. And now they're not only going to just say, well, I don't like you, or you're an idiot, you're a communist, you're a capitalist, you're a whatever people are going to say. Now they're going to actually be able to have a tool to report and rat and harm people. And so you think that these mentally unwell people that already engage in this kind of crazy swarm-like brigading behavior, you think they're not going to take this extra bit of incentive and just go completely apeshit on this? Come on, what world are we living in? We know how people act. You give them a little carrot and they're going to just run with it. And finally, of course, which kind of pushes back on that whole notion of this is a crowdsourced, decentralized kind of a thing, Twitter needs absolute, ultimate, final control over this. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Anyone who uses any kind of permissionless, relatively speaking, system knows that people will just attack or flood it just for the heck of it. Imagine if this is a completely unbiased, objective, anyone can participate, everything's equal kind of a system. Imagine a bunch of Trump people, for example, just coming on and just overwhelming the system with all kinds of reports and things like that, just to make sure their stuff is ahead of things. Twitter's not going to let that be. They're not going to let, true. According to this fact storm across all this other stuff, all this stuff that doesn't fit the left-leaning narrative is now being considered true and verified because all the right-wing Twitter bots or whatever are on it versus the other way around. No, they're going to eventually decide once and for all. Otherwise, you can just ensure that the system turns whichever way you, as someone who's trying to game it, goes. Twitter recently implemented a significant purge of users, mostly of conservative or right-wing political leanings, including prominent figures, and even who was the sitting US president at the time. These kinds of purges centrally decide whose ideas on the truth will be valid, even while pretending they're doing this by community consensus. The unfortunate result of this whole thing will probably be an increasingly deep echo chamber, more censorship and shutting down of people's opinions, and still centralized control. It's still going to be Twitter calling all the shots no matter what people report, and we're just going to basically have a tighter grip on the whole Twitterverse by Twitter than before, and not in a good way. So how do you actually fix something like this? Well, to be perfectly honest, you can't play arbiter of truth for the reasons I mentioned above. It's just not going to work out that way. Of course, you can have scientific journals that kind of go through the scientific process and ascertain as far as can be scientific fact, and you can reference those. But there's breaking news and stuff like that that just comes out and you cannot really have a scientific prognosis on it right away. So the best thing to do is just to let people say what they want, right? Let people express things and take it as that, not as facts. Someone says, this guy's saying blah, blah, blah happened. I mean, if you're trying to think that this guy saying that is scientific fact, then you shouldn't be on social media to begin with, let's be honest. The beauty of social media such as Twitter is its first-hand accounts. It's people giving their own opinion, giving their own perspective, and that's what you want. You want people's unique perspectives. You want people's unique showing of like, this is what's happening on the ground in here. Like, I'm in a war zone, for example, taking video, and it's like, well, that's not an accurate representation of what's going on there. Well, it is from this person's point of view, and that's all that really matters. You counter that by having other perspectives, other point of views. And if you just want something that's absolutely scientifically ironclad, there's other places to go for that. How about instead of telling people who they can trust and what opinions they can trust, why don't you just let them figure that out on their own? Let people figure out, oh, this is a good expert. He's always correct according to this and that. You know, this person comes up with the right, accurate information, and then let people just follow that person and share what they do. And then this other person doesn't. And then if someone's sharing something completely false, you can just say, well, this is the more trusted take on this, and here's his sources, or this is the other more trusted. And they can say, nah, I don't want to care. I don't want to agree with that. But eventually, the value does go to what people will value. And honestly, we've reached a point of distrust in experts, which is why there's all this like low-level nonsense information, because people feel like they're getting the truth from that, and they don't feel like they're getting the truth from the experts. And that's not on the fault of the people for sharing all kinds of conspiracy nonsense. It's the fault of the experts for letting them down and lying to them over the years and destroying that trust. So you have to rebuild that trust, have new experts that people can actually trust. And of course, when they start screwing up, it's time for other ones. Finally, what I would really love to see is to rope in prediction markets on this kind of a thing, where some expert or pundit, or even a lot of them, and honestly, this would be fun if this was built into the platform itself, could actually make a bet on a prediction, like who is going to be sworn in as the next president of the US. Is it going to be Trump again for a second time, or is it going to be Biden? People have all their opinions, but why don't you bet on it, bet money on it, and put that publicly? First off, people who don't actually believe what they're saying but are trying to change a narrative, they're going to shut up really fast. And other people who actually believe it are going to throw money down on that stuff, and then we get to see. And of course, with rapidly developing facts and information, which later can be subject to scientific scrutiny and things like that, you can make an assessment of it right away, put some money behind it, and then you lose if you're wrong later. And of course, a lot of times, if you just don't want to say anything about it, then you just abstain because you're like, look, this is too new. I don't want to lose money, so I don't want to run my mouth that then is going to cost me later. And then you can actually pin people to this sort of thing. You're saying like, oh, this is terrible, this is happening. And you say, really, where's your bet? Oh, I don't have one yet. Okay, then you're full of shit. Don't actually believe this. And it's easy to call people on that. And then over time, you can make track records of betting with their own money, their own skin in the game on these kinds of things. You can make that public. If someone has like an 86% success rate on this, first off, that person's making money, right? And second, when they say something, you can know they mean it if they've put money behind it. And you can tell based on their past track record how accurate they're probably going to be. And then you get to kind of let the market decide what is true or not. Although, obviously you can't really shape reality by just people's demand. If you have a market for truth, the truth will come out. Naomi Brockwell has an excellent video on prediction markets that I suggest you check out, covering how they work and some innovative new platforms that seek to address it. So let's end this with a little prediction. Any bets on how long it's going to take for Twitter to completely implode under all this stuff and just chase everyone who doesn't have their narrow point of view off the platform, start to go down, and then go straight to the government and ask for help, including squashing competitors? Let me know with a prediction. Put money behind it. I'm just kidding, if you want to. Anyway, see you guys later.